Amanda. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is finally December, you guys. I cannot believe December is already here. Christmas is almost here, and so is 2025. So it's time for us to get to the holiday spirit, and to kick off the holiday season, we're going to be diving into 11 terrifying paranormal encounters. Best way to get into the holiday spirit, alright? So you guys know that a couple of weeks ago, we dived into terrifying Ouija board encounters, but today, I have stories for you people dealt with the paranormal in their everyday life, doing everyday normal things. So, first off, loves, I want to say I'm so sorry for not posting in such a long time. I had exams all week, so I was very cramped, but I just finished my last exam on Wednesday, so I'm back posting for you guys on Christmas break now. So, we're going to go through the stories, we're going to read them, and then we're going to get into my opinion. And like I say with all my scary videos, if you guys don't like the stuff and aren't okay with it, feel free to click off. But now, let's get people who dealt with the paranormal in their everyday life. Okay. This first one is called, It Wasn't a Little Girl. I was camping with my husband and his friends at a small remote lake in New Mexico. There were about 10 people in our group and another group of 6 people in the next campsite. It was nighttime and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having a few drinks, and telling stories. When we all heard a sound like a little girl yelling out for help. Near group had children with them, we were all positive we were hearing a little girl and decided to search the area where we heard the noises from, together. There was a field behind our campsite and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field. That is what was making the noises. We all agreed this thing looked maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and as white as can be. We made our way closer to investigate, but whatever it was that we saw started backing away off as we got closer and disappeared into the trees. All night we continued to hear a little girl calling for help as we tried to sleep. That is terrifying. This actually reminds me so much of Annabelle, because the story of Annabelle is that the spirit said that it was a little girl, and it turns out that it actually wasn't a little girl, and it was something demonic that was in the doll. So that is terrifying. Like, they were hearing little girl noises, but the figure clearly wasn't a little girl. Okay. This next one is called The Walking Dead. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he wouldn't, and couldn't talk. But there was no medical reason as to why. He'd spoken earlier in his life, and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of him being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19, but one night, he vanished. He was later declared dead and missing. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is, let's call him Mario, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust and was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be missing in the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification of his person. However, they were able to identify him, I'm guessing via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said that they had already grieved the lost man, and whoever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They demanded not to be contacted again. Mario paced all day every day, moving his mouth that looked like talking or muttering, but no sounds came out. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen periodically, throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him, either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Mario would just grin, and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at the job, the last thing I saw was Mario pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later, I wonder if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years, I still don't know. That is so creepy, you guys. So I'm assuming she was dealing with a ghost. I mean, he'd been dead for 10 years, then he just shows up in the clothes that he vanished in and says, I've been dead for 10 years, and all of a sudden he's just back. So that is scary, and I'm assuming she was dealing with a ghost all along. Okay. Next one is called The Unrest Stop. I was driving across country with my mom and sister when I was 16 and my sister was 20. It was late, but we were well rested and still alert. We were driving along an interstate and needed a gas and bathroom break, so we stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on a road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car parked at the pump in front of us with 2 young men standing still outside of it. When we got there, everything felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night, and had never been afraid until then. My mom and sister went inside and I stayed in the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the two men had not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't talking. They weren't on their phones. They were just standing there, still as stone. My sister and mom came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving their bodies, and I swear we all saw the same thing. They had eyes dark as pitch and empty, truly empty, not black, not reflecting any light, just a void. We sped out of there and didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the experience is we couldn't find the place on any map. We knew exactly which spot the interstate to look, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or any paper maps we had. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out on that stretch of the road and only got confused looks. We traveled on the interstate since, and there is no rest stop. That is so creepy, you guys. Like, they saw a rest stop and they stopped at it, and then when they drive past it again, it's not there. Like, I've heard a lot of stories of people seeing stuff, and then when they look back, it's not there. And that is just so scary. Okay. The next one is called It Came For Us in the Graveyard. We were driving my friend's really old beat-up car through a massive graveyard. We stopped and walked down a little hill and came across a little pond. There was someone sitting on a rock on the other side of the pond. The figure was all black, and we couldn't make out any features other than the fact that it looked like a man who was wearing some old-styled top hat. We stupidly waved and shouted, "Hi!" He didn't show any acknowledgement and continued sitting still on the rock. All of a sudden, he jumped to his feet, started running to us on the water, and then vanished in the thin water about halfway on the pond. My friends and I screamed and ran back to the car. The car wouldn't start, and we heard something banging on the back of the car. It wasn't a constant bang, but every few seconds or so, we heard it. Nobody was outside from what we could see in the dark, but something was making a noise on the car. I opened my phone and started to dial my mom to come give us a boost, but I had no service. None of us had any cell service. The next 30 minutes were spent trying to get her car to start. No banging was heard afterwards, but we felt this heavy presence around us. Finally, the car started and she hit the pedal to the metal. We sped out of the graveyard so fast, immediately crossing the gates, and all of our phones regained cell service. One thing I know for certain is that someone or something was out there, and it was not an animal or a human. That is so scary. I think the worst possible thing to experience with paranormal is when you physically see it. Like, for example, the first story they saw an all-white figure, and in this story they saw a black figure and it just came like running towards them. That's terrifying. Like, I think the worst possible thing you can experience with paranormal is when you physically like see the spirit or a demon, and that is just scary. Okay. The next one is called It Was Good to See an Old Friend. When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew to the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about 35 miles through a very rural and almost abandoned part of our country. About 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road flagging me down. It turned out that it was one of the guys I attended high school with. Let's call him Jim. Jim gets in the car and we start talking. I had not seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same. Maybe a little older. We get to the town and I ask him if he wants to come to the VFW and have a drink. He says, "No, just take me home." Jim's parents had lived only a few blocks from my grandmother's house, and I turned in that direction, but he said to take him to the outskirts of town. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured that's where he lived. When we reached the end of the turn off, he said, "Just drop me here. It was good to see you again." And he walks off into the night. I go to the VFW and met some of my old classmates, and we started to talk. As we were talking about who's coming to the reunion, I mentioned that I had just picked up Jim up 3 miles east of town and I dropped him off. Everyone gets quiet. Even the guy singing karaoke stops and lays down the mic. My cousin goes white as a new t-shirt. Jim died on that curb 8 years ago. Rolled his car. We were all at his funeral. I was told. I started to feel dizzy and I went out to the car to take some deep breaths. There on the seat is a local newspaper printed 8 years previously containing Jim's death. I still have the paper. That is insane. So I'm assuming that she picked up her friend's ghost on the side of the road. Like, he died in that exact same spot, and she picked him up, and I'm assuming she met and talked to his ghost, and that's why he asked her to drop him off not close to any place. Okay. Next one is called Hell Hath No Fury Like a Woman's. After we moved into our house, we were told a woman had died there at the hands of her abusive husband. She hated men. My dad would wake up with scratches all over himself, and whenever my brother was mean to my sister or I, he would have scratches on him as well. One day, my brother hurt our sister. He hit her with something. He woke up later that night and had a horrible, bloody nose. The day we moved out, my brother accidentally broke his twin's arm trying out a wrestling move. He swears he would have died that night if it wasn't our last night in the house. That is terrifying. I'm pretty sure now we know that spirits and demons can do anything. And turns out that this spirit really did not like it when any kind of man would hurt a woman. And that's because she died at the hands of her abusive husband. Okay, that's scary. The next one is called Death Came for Him. I was standing in my parents' room talking to my very sick dad at the time. He was dying of stage 4 cancer. I got the feeling something was behind me. I looked towards the doorway of the living room to see something about 4'6" and fully black is peeking around the corner with its hands on the doorframe. I ran towards it and it slipped back around the door. When I got outside the doorway, there was nothing. My dad was completely confused when I stepped back inside the room and when I tell him. People who stayed at my house in my dad's final days claimed to have seen it. My mom saw the figure on multiple occasions, in multiple places, until he passed away. We haven't seen it since. That is creepy. So maybe that was death there, or maybe it was something else. But that is really, really scary. Okay. This next one is called My Mother Attracted Evil. After my parents divorced when I was a teenager, I lived with my mother. I experienced lots of paranormal happenings. Several times when I was reading in my bed, the room would start to feel really icy. Next, it would feel as if something or somebody that hated me was staring at me. When I got that feeling, I would leave the room and come back an hour later. Sometimes during the day, I would see a shadow figure sneaking along my bedroom walls. Something in the floor was pretending to be my dog. I went into my room and heard a deep growl from under the bed. My dog wasn't capable of making a noise that deep. It sounded like either a really big dog or a man doing his best dog impressions. Other times, my dog would whimper and pace up the room next to mine, but wouldn't come when I called, as if he was afraid of something in the hallway. When I moved in with my father, the paranormal activity stopped. Okay, so maybe her mother did attract something evil, or maybe a ghost came in there and wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. Okay. This next one is called Evicted by a Ghost. Shortly after college, I got married. We immediately moved into a basement apartment because that's all that was available within our budget. The place had a poltergeist, and my wife was terrified. Whatever resided there with us made it clear that I wanted to live alone. Sorry. Dishes, glasses, and other items would fly off the shelf. My wife was hit several times. There was always an ominous feeling like we were being watched. At night when we walked through the apartment in the dark, there would be insanely bright flashes of light that would illuminate the entire room. One night when we were going to bed, as soon as my wife and I walked into the bedroom, we heard a voice out of nowhere say, my name, move. My wife looked at me and I looked at her. I said loudly, you've got it, bud. We moved out 2 days later and stayed with family. The old lady who owned the place died a few months later and the house was torn down. It is still an empty lot to this day, nothing but grass and a tree. I still drive by it every now and again. That is so terrifying. Like, imagine just moving in and there's something there that clearly doesn't want you there and it forced you to move. Okay, that's really scary. Next one is called The Death March. My dad used to work as a corrections officer at a rural prison. He drove the perimeter of the property for his entire shift where he would check empty buildings for runaway inmates. It was generally a boring job. One night, my dad was parked on the hill reading a magazine when he started to feel a thumping in his body. He described it as the feeling you get when speakers are playing a song with a really heavy bass. He put the magazine down and checked his rearview mirror where he saw someone outside the truck. He grabbed his pistol and jumped out of the truck with his weapon drawn. Outside the truck, he realized it was a group of Native Americans walking through the truck and directly through his seat, only to disappear at the exact spot he was sitting. He said it was clear that they were ghosts because many of them appeared injured. This went on for a few seconds and then the whole group disappeared. He called the other perimeter guy on his walkie and tried to explain, and the other guy almost immediately stopped communicating. Turns out the other guy had seen this happen before but didn't believe in ghosts, so he wouldn't talk about it. Okay, that one's like, I'd say, where you see like a ghost. It's not like too scary, but also it's like like you're just doing your job, and all of a sudden you start to feel like a heavy thumping in your body, and you go out and just see ghosts walking through your seats. So it's like 50-50 terrifying. Okay, this last one is called The Demon's Room. I worked as a forensic nurse in a hospital's locked up unit. We had one older lady who swore she was being haunted and abused by a demon. So many crazy things would happen while she was on the unit. We'd go into the room to do normal care, leave, and seconds later she'd start screaming bloody murder. We ran into the room to find her looking like she'd been in... we ran into the room to find her looking like she'd been in a fight with a boxing champ. Bloody lip, black eye, marks all over her body. No one ever saw her doing this stuff to herself. Things would get moved around in the room by themselves. At one point, she was in protective restraints because the doctor thought she was hurting herself. There was no way she could have moved or done anything to herself while in these restraints, but new marks would always appear on her. The tray and the cart would be across the room. The room was secured, so there was no way somebody else was doing this. When we asked her question, she simply just said, it was a demon. After she was discharged, we always had trouble with that room. If there was going to be a rapid response or code, it happened in that room. One night, a guard reported lights blinking on and off. It was that room. And that is the final story. Okay, guys. Wow. Honestly, like, we've talked about a lot of paranormal games and rituals on my channel. And, like, obviously, if you play a paranormal game or ritual, you're going to invite something to play with you that's not alive. But these people just had experiences without even playing a game or ritual, or even, like, contacting anything. And, like, normally when you play a game or ritual, it's to challenge the spirit or demon. Like, with Dead Man's Tag, you know that you're challenging the dead to a game of tag. One Man Hide and Seek, you're challenging a spirit to put some doll to play a game of hide and seek with you. The Dry Bones ritual, you're inviting a demon to play a game of hide and seek with you. So most of these games are challenging spirits, but for this, the paranormal just came to them, which kind of like shows you that the paranormal can come anywhere, anytime, and you can experience it in any way, shape, or form. Like, all the experience of the paranormal, and that's just scary. Like, imagine, for example, moving into a new house, and all of a sudden you just hear somebody telling you to get out and leave, and turns out that it was something that didn't want any company. Or that story of the family who moved into a house, and the woman died at the hands of her abusive husband, and she hated all men. Like, that's just really scary. For you to think that, like, you just experience the paranormal in everyday life is really, really scary. And people didn't do anything. They didn't do rituals or games or, like, summon something, but they just experienced the paranormal normally. And sometimes demons and spirits will act violently for no reason. Like, if they want to act violently, they will. It's not like they won't act violently. Some will act violently for no reason. And those stories were just bone-chilling. Like, they really will just keep you up at night. Like, those were just really, really scary. And I feel that, honestly, like, it's not that you'll always experience something paranormal, but it's also in the fact that, like, you don't know when you could. And also, for example, like, the one place you can experience something paranormal is, for example, a graveyard. Or ghosts, demons, and spirits can form attachment to things. Not only people, they can also form attachment to things like Annabelle, for example. The spirit is attached to the doll. Like, it won't come out of the doll. So they can form attachments to things. And if a spirit formed an attachment to a house, then it's probably a good idea that you don't stay there. So I'm assuming that that couple who got married and moved in, the spirit was attached to that house and didn't want anybody. So after it got rid of them, it got rid of the old woman who owned the place. And that other house where that woman died, she wanted to protect any woman who was being abused or hurt by a man, which is just terrifying. Or that woman who was, that last story that we read, the woman who was being abused by a demon, like, that is just scary. Or that gas stop that didn't exist, or when she picked up her friend and turns out that her friend had been dead for 8 years at that exact same spot that she drive by. So that was terrifying. Like, that is honestly really, really scary. And I probably would never want to be alone ever again if I experienced any of those things. Like, when it comes to demons, spirits, and ghosts, you really don't know what they're capable of, which is why I just say, like, don't mess with them. And these people were just unlucky to experience something paranormal. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. I just want to share these stories with you guys, and I found them really interesting, and I wanted to hear your guys' opinion. Comment down below and let me know your thoughts. I love to hear your thoughts for these kind of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So comment down below and let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye! Love you!